Greetings, loyal listeners and new recruits. I'm Drew Deach.
I'm rootin' tootin' Travis Newton.
And this is GenreVision. And we're doing something a little different this week. We're not going to be reviewing any action films or sci-fi cinema or anything. We're doing a Q&A episode with a bunch of wonderful questions submitted by you, loyal listeners. We have so many to get to, so real quick, some calls to action this week. Wanted to let everybody know that Third Time's the Charm is back. We just posted our new episode on The Dark Knight Rises. Go listen to it. It's a really good episode. And you can also go to patreon.com/GenreVision and become a subscriber and listen to the bonus episode where we talk about Batman Begins and The Dark Knight.
If people are looking for Third Time's the Charm, where can they find it?
You can go to GenreVision.com, and there's a nice little tab up at the top that says Third Time's the Charm. You can click it, and you can also find it on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including iTunes. And speaking of iTunes, it's been quite a while since we've asked people to go review this show, GenreVision, on iTunes. And if you really like the show, if you like this stuff we're doing this week with Q&As and everything that we do on the show, please, please, please rate and review the show on iTunes. It really is the best kind of marketing we can hope for right now.
Yeah, that's about it. Are you ready? You ready for this?
Oh, yeah. Just getting a nice swig of my Leinenkugel Summer Shandy.
He is prepping the pipes.
That's right. And yeah, let's dive right in because we have so many questions. The first one comes from loyal listener Eric Fuchs. Eric asks, what would you say is the single worst movie you've had to review for the show? And then he says, the most Morgan-y of Morgans. It's in reference to the movie we did, Morgan. And the single best movie we've done for the show. What do you got for this, Travis?
Probably the single best movie that this show has in the feed was before I actually joined the show. It's probably Alien. Is the single best movie we've ever talked about, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe.
Well, maybe not talked about, but like given a full episode 2 as a review.
Yeah. I mean, we did a lot of, classics back in the old days.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of Criterion stuff on there, and it's some really, really great movies. Night of the Hunter, Le Samurai, My Night at Maud's.
Yeah. But you know what he really wants to know? What's the single worst movie?
I really do feel like we hit a low point right when we did Life, Ghost in the Shell, and the Belko Experiment.
I knew you were going to bring up Life.
Well, I mean, it's not that Life is particularly awful, but like that stretch of 3 movies that we were just like, we'd like for these to be interesting, and like none of them ended up like being worth talking about. I mean, it's tough to say that because like to go to Bummer Town here for a second, that's right when my dad died. Those 3 movies. So like those are never going to be fun memories, but I also feel like they just are not good movies at all.
Well, I had quite a few, because when he says the most Morgan-y of Morgans, I was like, well, Morgan isn't the worst thing. That would be like pure middle of the road movie there was no reason we should have covered.
Right. The worst stuff is like the thing we have a hard time talking about because there's so little to say.
Right. So
it's just not worth anybody's time. That's the worst stuff.
So for that one, I've got like The Dark Tower. We didn't need to do an episode on The Dark Tower.
Fuck no.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it seemed like we should because of its pedigree, but looking back,
pedigree.
It's like, well, sure, it's Stephen King. It's a giant property. It's something everybody was expecting. Idris Elba's in a lead performance, all this stuff. But it's just so middle of the road, nothing. I would say some of the worst ones we've done have actually been more recent. Like, I think Wild Wild West is one of the worst movies we've done on the show.
Yeah, I know that seems very, very fresh in our minds, but it is really garbage.
The only other one I would say, if I was going to have a top 3, it would be Wild Wild West, Van Helsing, and X-Men Apocalypse.
Van Helsing's pretty bad. X-Men Apocalypse is pretty bad as well. I mean, we did find plenty to say about X-Men Apocalypse. I don't know if it was any fun to talk about necessarily. But like, I listened to our episode on the Black Hole just a few days ago, and we were very unkind to that movie. Like, it's very doofy, but actually I think you and I had a pretty good time with it. It's not a great movie at all, but like we had a fun time talking about all the things that made us laugh and all the things we found silly about the movie.
Yeah, we can spin some straw into gold.
We tried. Anyway, next up, this comes from mysterious loyal listener Z1. They ask, is Travis the bald one and Drew the balding one?
I mean,
I'm pretty bald. I'm 32. I started losing my hair in like my mid-teens. it wasn't really noticeable until like 19 that people were like, dude, you're going bald. And I was like, yeah, I didn't know what to do about it. Really wasn't much to do about it. So now I'm just pretty bald.
Yeah, but you carry it well. You have a Picard elegance about it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm actually blessed to have a pretty well-shaped dome piece.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a head that looks like a hillock of fermenting dough or a pack of hot dogs. Like, I'm pretty lucky to have a fairly smooth dome. So I do look good with a shaved head, I think. That's probably the best option for me at this point in my male pattern baldness.
Yeah, and yes, I'm certainly balding, but I've been shaving it. Like, this is the most in my life that I've kept, my hair really, really short for a lengthy period of time. And it's nice, just maintenance-wise. Easy enough to take care of. But thanks, Z1, for making us think about our balding.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I
really am. Like,
well, again, it's because you look good. Like,
well, thanks.
A good-looking bald guy.
And also, I think people are intimidated a little bit because I'm 6'2", I'm bald. I usually have a beard. I don't know. People might think I'm a bouncer or something, but
you could pull it off.
I'm sure I could, but I'm way more teddy bear than a bouncer.
Oh, you are. I mean, just the look. But.
Yeah.
Well, next one comes from Eric Johnson. And he says, I believe you mentioned this when talking about Rebel Wilson's latest and that she was a producer on that vehicle. Wondering if you could go a little into what producers do and why they do it. The reason I ask this is I see more often in movies these days where the main stars are directors or producers, like Avengers Endgame, where you have James Gunn and Jon Favreau as producers. So here's the thing. There's a pretty textbook answer to this, but if you search what do producers do, there is literally an article about what do producers do really?
Well, that's because producers don't do one thing.
Right.
It's a whole system of things that need to happen. And depending on how the production begins, the producer is going to perform different duties. And if there are multiple producers, they may be divvying up duties in some way that makes sense for them as a producing team.
I think the best way to describe them are facilitators.
Sure, but let's say somebody wants to make a movie out of Settlers of Catan. This producer says, I want to make a Settlers of Catan movie. So they're the one that actually goes, can I get the rights to make a Settlers of Catan movie? And once they secure the rights to the Settlers of Catan movie, then they're going to go, okay, now it's time for me to find some artist that can start bringing this Settlers of Catan idea into fruition. So they might hire a screenwriter to start writing something for them. They might hire a director as some sort of person to help guide the vision of what this movie is going to be. Ultimately, in that scenario, the director and the writer are essentially working for the producer. But where you start to see some odd things is okay, what role do studio executives play in this? And where does the line get crossed, and what kind of control they can exert over the production? This is going to vary based on what kind of movie it is. Say if it's an independent film, the producer's job is to go out and secure financing to actually find the money people who will give money to the production to make sure that it's greenlit and that it can go on and get shot and get finished. If this is a studio project, maybe something a little bit different. Maybe a producer is a development executive that has held on to a particular property for a long time because the studio has owned the rights, and they're the one that gets to say, okay, we're going to hire this person or we're going to hire that person. So once you get out of development, a producer's job is to be on set and essentially to manage the production. That is a really broad range of things.
It's unfortunate because there's no one definition because it all varies, like you're saying, depending on the production. Some producers are way more hands-on, and there's plenty of nightmare stories of producers stepping in and being too controlling and, taking control away from the director or overseeing too much. It really depends because no two film productions are the same.
Sure. I mean, there is a general sort of structure on how things work, on who answers to whom. But say if there are multiple producers on a film, they may not all perform the same duties, or they may not all perform the same amount of work. For instance, Rebel Wilson, on this latest movie she did, that remake of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels called The Hustle, she is listed as PGA on the film, I believe. PGA stands for Producers Guild of America, and when you see that next to a producer's name in a film's credits, that's called the producer's mark. What that signifies is that producer has done a lot of the work, or a lion's share of the work, to get that movie made. Because you can have a producer credit or an executive producer credit on the film, and the title doesn't necessarily have to mean that you did a whole lot of active work in getting the film made.
Right.
For instance, did James Gunn do a whole lot of active work in making Avengers Endgame? I'm willing to bet he did not, and the same with Jon Favreau. However, when you're figuring out who gets what kind of money for what sort of reason, for instance, does Jon Favreau get to make money on the back end of Avengers Endgame? Being listed as a producer, more than likely, yes.
Right.
Same with James Gunn.
We did our best to condense that because there's a lot more. But I would definitely, you know, if it's something you're interested in, research it and find out some more about it, because it is a very important part of film production that doesn't necessarily always get talked about.
Next up is also Eric Johnson. He says, there was supposed to be a movie called Grimm, which has space aliens that come to Earth, look essentially like Grim Reapers, and generally kill people. I thought I actually saw a trailer, or maybe it might have been a concept preview. Anyway, did anything come of this? I see that there was a horror movie called Grimm, but that movie looks like The Descent. And is this a thing, Drew?
Well, okay, the movie that he saw that looked like The Descent, Grimm, is a thing. It's awful. I've seen it. I think Joe Bob Briggs did it on Monster Vision and gave it like a 0.5 star.
Is this the Blockbuster VHS cover that I remember? It has like this sort of big yawning monster mouth.
Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
That thing's been around forever.
Yep. And I tried to find this movie that Eric Johnson was talking about. I couldn't find anything about a movie. I did find that apparently it might have been an Ancient Aliens episode that talked about, you know, there's all these portraits of Grim Reapers, you know, during the plague. Were these actually alien beings that were, you know, that kind of thing? So I don't know if that's where the idea spawned from. Was like, maybe these, you know, these Grim Reapers that we see in ancient art were actually alien beings or something. But I could not find anything. So I'm sorry. And I don't remember ever seeing anything like this in my own personal history.
Yeah, I'd never heard of this before you mentioned it, Eric. I'm sorry we didn't really have any more info for you, but that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, no, keep looking. You know, your Google foo might be stronger than ours.
Yeah, if you find anything, please let us know.
Next one comes from Michael Edwards, and he says, Conan O'Brien versus Conan the Barbarian. Hungry Hippos, best of 7. Who wins and why?
Okay. This is easy. This is easy. Okay.
It's Conan O'Brien.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Like,
I'm sorry.
absolutely.
I have to take the easy route because it's really the only route. Okay. Have you ever watched Conan O'Brien play a video game?
Sure.
Okay. He's terrible at them. I have no reason to believe that he would be any better at Hungry Hippos. However, Conan the Barbarian, what is best in Conan's life?
To crush his enemies, see them driven before him, and hear the lamentation of their women.
That's enough motivation to win 7 out of 7 Hungry Hippos games.
I feel like Conan the Barbarian would crush the Hungry Hippo, board, possibly on accident, and then that would give Conan O'Brien the win by default.
Nah, I think Conan the Barbarian could call upon high to Crom and say,
That's
Crom,
true.
Why have you forsaken me against this awful red-haired giant?
Yeah, if you're not going to help me, then to hell with you.
The hell with you.
All right, yeah, you make a good point. So I think we gotta give the win to Conan the Barbarian.
Crush the enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women.
That is good. Go watch Conan the Barbarian, everybody. That movie's great.
The narration at the beginning always makes me feel great. Before the oceans drank Atlantis.
Ah, man. I just want to watch Conan the Barbarian. All right, what's next up?
This is from loyal listener Thaddeus K. And he says, Travis, you said in an earlier episode that your brother served in the military. I thank him for his service. I did mention in an earlier episode that my brother-in-law served in the military. I actually don't have a brother in the traditional sense. I do have a younger sister.
You've just kickstarted an entire conspiracy theory.
Yeah. I mean, people can listen to previous episodes and paste together what they want to paste together, but I don't have a brother, but I do have a brother-in-law, and he was indeed in the Army. He was infantry. Thanks for thanking him, I guess. He's like, if you were to talk to him, he's not one that really enjoys being thanked for his service. Like, it's not something he really thinks about. Doesn't feel like he's owed thanks.
Well, you hear that a lot from people in the military.
Yeah, that's his thing.
All right. Next one is from our very loyal listener, T-Bones McRoanoke.
Fiercely loyal.
And this is a multi-part question. T-Bones McRoanoke says, Hollywood would like to make a movie of your life. Here's the deal. Number 1, your character is being gender flipped. Who stars as female Drew and Travis, or male Danny if she wants to join in? Unfortunately, Danny's not here with us. Number 2, the studio said you can pick the director, but the director has to be deceased. They can make it work. There's a pet cemetery on the Warner Brothers lot. I've been on the Warner Brothers lot. There is a pet cemetery. Who do you pick from beyond the grave? 3, what is the title of your movie? And 4, Gary Busey has to be cast as someone from your life, not Drew or Travis or Danny. Who's getting Busey'd?
All right. Who stars as female Travis? Probably Beanie Feldstein, who...
You son of a bitch!
She's probably very, very funny in...
That's on my list.
Oh, well, you know, she's very good.
I had 2 answers, because if I get to cast anybody as me, I'm going to pick the most idealized version. It's going to be Charlize Theron.
Well, thereon lies the problem. Is you can just pick any woman. I mean, I have seen you with hair like Charlize's before, but
it's true. But yes, I was like, if I was being realistic, I was going to pick Beanie Feldstein.
She's just so great, though.
So you know where our heads lie. So that's for casting. Number 2, who's the director? But you're a resurrected director.
Oh boy, you have one?
Of course I do. Charles Lawton. Who directed Night of the Hunter, only movie he ever directed. So I just want the chance to see. It's like that he did one movie, and his one movie is better than some directors' entire filmographies.
This is true.
So I'd be like, if he's going to get one more movie and it's going to be my life story, I have to give him that chance.
I'd probably go with Romero.
Yeah, not bad. You get some heavy-handed political commentary, but that
my life is not without that. Trust me.
Yes. Well, number 3, what's the title of your life story movie?
I think the most fun movie to make out of my life would be when I was in a ska band.
Oh, so would it be the title of your band?
Yeah, which if I was in a high school ska band called the Kim Basinger Band, that'd be a pretty fun title for a movie.
Yeah, I wonder if you'd have to clear some rights with Kim Basinger's estate, but
we'll see.
That's not a bad title. The title to my movie would be Daymare, specifically because on February 19th, 1996, there was a marathon on, I believe it was USA, and it was a President's Day marathon called President's Daymare, where they showed Critters, The Fly 2, Tremors, and Jaws 3. And I remember sending this commercial, because I found the commercial for it on YouTube, and I sent it to Travis, and he was like, that day is like your origin story.
Yeah, pretty much. No, I mean, It was like, Drew started puberty that day. You know?
Yeah, well, that's just when, I knew who I was on that day. So Daymare, which I think would be it's funny. It would also imply, ups and downs and craziness in my life, but also it would come back to, it's like, yeah, this is who I am. I love these kind of movies, and that's when, I've been the happiest, and what I kind of would like the legacy of my genre film love to be. And then number 4, Gary Busey has to be cast as someone from your life. Who's getting Busey'd?
Oh, my high school band teacher.
Ooh, that's a good one. That I would love to see. I mean, it's my dad. I definitely want Busey to to be as wacky as my dad could be.
I mean, if it's anything close to his uncle performance in Silver Bullet, then I know we're in for a treat.
Exactly. So
hey,
thanks
come
to
here,
you
I'll
both.
put a cherry bomb in your mom's coffee. She's gonna love it.
What's the dog's name from Surviving the Game? It's like Prince Henry Stout or something.
Yes, Prince Henry Stout.
Go listen to our Surviving the Game episode. Well, thanks, T-Bones. That was a really fun little experiment. What's up next?
Next question's from Moldy Wilson. Moldy asks, you can only watch films from one non-English speaking country for the rest of your life. What country do you choose?
I think I have to be a horrible weeb here and say Japan. I think if there's any foreign cinema that I've seen the most from, it would probably be Japan.
I'm picking Hong Kong.
Those were the two that I was debating between. I'm like, Hong Kong's got better, action cinema.
I mean, I might feel differently tomorrow, but like, there's such a crazy variety of the stuff that comes out of Hong Kong.
It's true.
Next up, from Moldy Wilson, he also asks, can Jordan Peele, despite having only directed 2 films, be described as an auteur? Whatever, man. Like, auteur is one of these silly words that we use in film criticism and film theory that basically describes the level of authorship that a filmmaker has over a piece of work. And really, authorship is very nebulous.
Oh, especially in the film world.
Yeah.
I think it's just more, it's like, as of now, Jordan Peele is very front and center to the marketing and the identity of the movies that he's making, more so than other directors or creatives in certain things. Like, nobody's asking nobody thinks of, Stuber as whoever the director of Stuber. I don't even know who the director of Stuber is. Right.
But because Jordan Peele is a known commodity by himself, like he, in some essence, kind of stars in his movies and he's not even in them.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, auteur is one of those, like you said, it just means author.
It's an auteur is really, so much of what we talk about as auteurs is like some famous man whose name can be put on a movie poster that makes people go, oh, the next movie from so-and-so.
Right.
They have to be some sort of recognizable commodity that they can put, Stanley Kubrick's Inception or whatever. And it's, ooh, an auteur film.
Good Lord, man. I can hear the film bro chorus that just happened when you said Stanley Kubrick's Inception.
That's fine. I'm out here making some scrotum shrivel. All right. Moldy Wilson also asks, as the final part of his question, which would be better, Wes Anderson's films if they were directed by P.T. Anderson, or P.T. Anderson's films if they were directed by Wes Anderson?
A switch of Andersons. I mean, I think P.T. Anderson could...
A murder of crows. A switch of Andersons.
A switch of Andersons.
A gaggle of geese.
I think P.T. Anderson could find really interesting movies to make out of the subject matter that's in Wes Anderson's films, but I can't see P.T. Anderson's movies subjecting themselves to the very idiosyncratic visual styling of Wes Anderson.
On the other hand, I feel exactly the opposite. I think I would be really fortunate to see a version of something like Phantom Thread directed by Wes Anderson, because Phantom Thread has sort of a wicked sense of humor to it. Mm-hmm. And it's a little stagey. It's a little stiff in some of the ways that Wes Anderson's films can be. They're very particular. It's a designer film, a very sort of bespoke, custom tailored film. And I think that kind of style could work under the auspices of somebody like Wes Anderson. So I would, answer the opposite way. I'd watch, Inherent Vice if it were directed by Wes Anderson. It doesn't seem like a very Wes Anderson-y film, but I'd be intrigued enough by that idea to watch that.
Now let's have them both and live in a more beautiful world.
We are blessed with a switch of Andersons.
A switch of Andersons. Next one's from Mark P. And Mark P had a very long intro into this question, and you should go to our Ask Us Anything post to see his full thoughts. But his question pretty much is, do you ever find yourself feeling that fandom, as an admittedly massive generalization, has begun to take pop culture far too seriously? This could be an entire episode's worth of an answer, so I will just say, yes, I definitely think that there is a swath of fandom that takes stuff a little too seriously, but that's kind of the case with all art and fiction in history.
Well, I mean, I think we discount just how much fiction means to people. I think fandom has been sort of a toxic culture for a long time. The difference that we're seeing with it now is that there are more platforms upon which fandom can be discussed. There are more platforms upon which arguments can take place. And there are essentially more battlefields for clashes to happen. There are more opportunities for fandom to go awry. It used to be that fandom the people that were super, super passionate about these things, they had message boards that they could write on. They had magazines that they could write into. But ultimately, they weren't really given the kind of platform or, the kind of stroking that they're getting these days. Right now, Star Wars fandom gets celebration, and it's a day all about them. And because companies have realized that fandom is sort of a cash cow, they are now encouraging the development of fan culture, somewhat irresponsibly, I might add.
I don't disagree. Like I said, short answer is yes, and maybe we'll do kind of a Patreon episode that dives deeper into this stuff. And we've definitely talked about it on Patreon episodes before. But more importantly, Mark P asks, Travis, how do you cook beans?
I will direct everybody to the black beans recipe from SeriousEats.com. It is a black beans recipe in which you do not have to pre-soak your beans. I find it is a pretty good guideline on making tasty beans. I don't eat beans too frequently, but, being a person with a limited budget, I do always have beans on hand to make a meal from. So I do think that there are some really cardinal sins when it comes to cooking beans. For instance, my mom likes her beans practically crunchy. This is wrong. No, crunchy beans are out of the question. I like them firm. I like a little bit of tooth to them. No, you just like fucking crunchy ass beans. Just eat them out of the bag, lady. Fuck.
That bean question got Travis riled up. I think we got to move on. What's the next question, Travis?
Guy looking for a pencil asks, "Do you have a pencil I could borrow?"
I actually don't. I don't think I have.
Do.
Okay. I don't have a single pencil in my immediate vicinity, so
actually,
no.
I have a copper mug, like one that people would use for like a Moscow Mule, on my desk.
Ooh, nice.
In which there is an assortment of marking tools, some ballpoint pens, a Sharpie, and then some Palomino Blackwing 602 pencils, which are a low-pressure drawing pencil. So it's something you don't have to push down really, really hard on to get a good solid mark. It's just a well-made pencil. Like if you buy a cheap pencil, like sometimes you'll sharpen the pencil and like the graphite won't be dead center in the pencil, so you don't get a good sharpen. Like the graphite rod in the center of the pencil is like half out of the sharpening area, and you have just this weird lopsided sharpen on it. That doesn't happen with these pencils, and you do pay a little bit more for them, but they last a long time.
You can read more of Travis's pencil critiques at his blog, leadhead.com.
And they do have replaceable erasers. I don't use many of them, so it is nice to have them when I do, on the rare occasion, need a pencil.
All right.
And guy looking for a pencil, if you want one, make yourself at home, have one. Have a pencil.
Yeah. Hit Travis up. He is clearly a pencil aficionado. More questions here from Moldy Wilson that they submitted later. Most overrated and underrated De Niro performances. Well, those are terms I'm kind of not crazy about anymore because they're extremely subjective. And I mean, I don't think there's an overrated De Niro performance. Like maybe I don't know, Meet the Parents or Silver Linings Playbook.
I don't know. I would say underrated would be Meet the Parents.
Okay, maybe, but underrated ones.
I think it lets us know that like De Niro can be a real silly fucker sometimes.
Okay, well, I mean, underrated. I had a couple. I would definitely say Harry Tuttle in Brazil. He's so funny in that movie.
Oh, he's so good.
I actually think, and our friend and GenreVision family member Daniel Ryan will back me up on this. De Niro as the creature in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I think he's actually one of the best parts of that movie. More
than likely, you're right. I have not seen that movie in many years. I should revisit it. I understand it's not very good.
I don't know. I think that's one that we might find a place for on the show.
All I remember is Kenneth Branagh taking like a dead Helena Bonham Carter down like a big staircase and just being like, "Wah!"
It's very extra, as the kids would say. But and then the last one that I would say underrated that I don't see people bring up enough is Louis Cypher. Say it faster and you'll see what it means. In Angel Heart, which it's spoiler alert, it's Robert De Niro's the devil.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they make that pretty obvious in the movie. His name is Louis Cypher, but
exactly.
That's an interesting movie. I own that on DVD.
It's weird. It's like the hardest movie to love, but the few people that do really do. But it's always been a wonderful curiosity to me.
It's fucking wacky.
Yeah. Moldy Wilson also asks, what film would have benefited most if it had been directed by Joe Dante?
What? I can't think of many films that wouldn't benefit in some way from being directed by Joe Dante.
Of course. I mean, he's fantastic, but unfortunately nobody gives him the budget to make really good movies anymore. But I was thinking of more modern movies and something that they should have tapped him for. Man, Joe Dante should have made the Goosebumps movie.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I think
No
that's
question.
like such a perfect marriage of material and director, and who would understand that. So yeah, Goosebumps.
Okay. I will agree with Drew in that case.
And then last one by Moldy Wilson here is, what silent movie is begging for a remake? Moldy Wilson would like to see Metropolis.
D.W. Griffith's Intolerance.
Oh, okay. I have not seen that one. I would love to see a wonderfully expressionistic remake of F.W. Murnau's Faust, rather.
Yeah, or Carl Theodor Dreyer's Vampire.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Actually, I recant my previous choice with Intolerance. I think there's really no way to do Intolerance any grander. I mean, you would have to do sort of a low-key remake. It's kind of the Cloud Atlas of its day, honestly. Mm-hmm. And it was sort of a conscious response from Griffith, who knew that he had fucked up with Birth of a Nation, basically, and wanted to make something that was sort of, politically on another side of the spectrum. And Intolerance is a pretty interesting film. It's definitely a curiosity. If you're interested in popular silent films from that era, I would definitely recommend Intolerance. There is a good Blu-ray of it out there with a beautiful restoration, so I would recommend people watch that film. But Carl Theodor Dreyer's Vampire, there's some cool stylistic meat on those bones that I think could be used today in something cool.
Totally agree. What's our next question?
Next question comes from Stunner Campbell. They ask, if you had the magic ticket from Last Action Hero, what movie would you visit?
Most of the movies I enjoy, I would probably get killed in. Mm-hmm. So I had to think very carefully. I would like to visit Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
You'd get killed.
No, I don't think I'm. No, you think I'm that terrible?
You'd get juiced. No, but maybe you're a little clumsy. You're gonna take a tumble into that river.
No, the only people that get killed in that have like terrible, horrible, awful, no good, very bad character traits.
Like nose picking. Everybody picks their nose, my dude.
I think I would survive that, and I definitely want to visit a musical because I want to know what it's like to experience everybody breaking out in song. And not in a stupid, like, flash mobby way. Like, it's just like you're compelled and everybody knows lyrics and everybody's having a good time. What about you? What movie would you visit?
I would visit Jaws for sure.
Just wouldn't get in the water?
Just hang out in Amity, man.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I've been to the...
your boy needs a vacation, and...
Oh, that too.
I would definitely benefit with a vacation in a nice place without a cell phone.
Amity would give you that. Especially,
Amity means friendship.
It does. All right, what's our next question?
Sonner Campbell also asks, what cinematic piece of clothing do you wish you had in your wardrobe?
This is hard because it's like, is it something I would actually regularly wear or just a piece of clothing that I want to hoard and keep for my own? If it's one to hoard and keep for my own, and I don't know, I'd probably find an excuse to wear it. I want the bounty hunter outfits from Critters.
Yeah, those are pretty good. And do you look good in maroon?
I can make it look good.
Okay, I believe it.
What about you?
Any Hawaiian shirt that Arnold Schwarzenegger has ever worn, rather.
Oh, the one he wears on the plane in Commando.
The one in Running Man is incredible.
That is good.
Yeah. So any Hawaiian shirt that Arnold Schwarzenegger has worn, I believe I could rock that. I believe I could rock it righteously, all daily and all nightly. Okay. Sonner Campbell also asks, what female celebrity do you think could rock a beard or mustache?
Elizabeth Moss.
Elizabeth Moss was pretty good. It's a pretty good choice.
I think she's got because you have to have a good jawline for it. And I think she's got an excellent jawline.
You're right.
A rockin' beard.
But also, even if you don't have a fantastic jawline, you can actually have a very nice beard that can give you a better shape to your doughy hillock of a face. Let's see. I'm not saying that this person has a doughy hillock of a face, but I say Bryce Dallas Howard.
Okay. I could definitely see her rocking like a wonderful Magnum PI mustache.
And a soul patch.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Somebody Photoshop that for us.
Thank you. In her Jurassic World getup. Sonner Campbell also asks, what is the most recent song you learned the lyrics to?
I've been listening to a lot of Harley Poe, who's kind of this like horror-themed folksy singer. They did a version of the Hearse song, which was actually in one of those scary stories to tell in the dark books.
Yeah,
and it's real. I mean, he expounds on the lyrics and writes his own lyrics, and it gets kind of progressively grosser. It's all maggots and worms and stuff. But I really like it, and I've been kind of delving into his stuff recently. So that's that.
I'm going to go ahead and say my favorite track from an album that I really love, that's fairly new. This is Head Over Heels by Chromeo. The song is called One Track Mind. It is a really fantastic song. I've listened to it a whole bunch, probably way too much, but I definitely know all the words. So there you have it. Okay, Sonner Campbell. He asks, what was the first thing you learned to cook?
Probably an omelet.
Same for me. Eggs, just being able to put eggs in a pan and make something happen.
Yeah, I mean, scrambled eggs is kind of, I think, one of the easiest. But it was specifically, like, I remember the first time I perfectly flipped an omelet and felt, like, so proud of myself. I was like, yeah, that worked.
Feels good.
It does. So, yeah, it's probably an omelet.
Sonner Campbell says, a mad scientist has abducted both of you. He's going to sew a head onto both of your bodies right next to your own head, and he's going to let you decide who gets which head. The first head's Nicolas Cage, and the second head is Keanu Reeves.
So I'm assuming what he's asking is, one of us gets Cage, one of us gets Reeves.
I'd be fine with either.
I mean, me too. If I have a preference, I think this is kind of crazy. I want Cage.
I'd take Keanu, but I mean, I think I would probably have a preference for Cage. But you know what? I'll let you have Cage. I'll take Keanu.
Yeah.
We're all good.
We're living our best double-headed life.
Uh-huh.
Next set of questions comes from our GenreVision sister, Danielle Ryan.
Hey, Danny.
Her first question is, if you could make a film adaptation of any novel, what would it be and who would you want to direct?
I'd like to make a version of Lord of the Flies that, that really gets at what I found that was interesting about the book.
Yeah, I'd say there's two very interesting adaptations of that movie that are out there, but I don't think there's the best adaptation yet.
Yeah, well, both of them are very literal adaptations. The second one updates the material a bit and kind of trims back some of the stranger elements of it. Like, it gets rid of the whole idea that there's nuclear war happening in the world outside. And there are actually like adults that make it to the island in the beginning and stuff like that. So the 1990s one is an interesting riff on the material, but I don't think gets at the heart of what I think is interesting about Lord of the Flies.
Sure.
Which is that the book is quite scary. And the movie,
it's horror.
Yeah, well, it's definitely horrifying, but the horror elements of the novel haven't really translated to screen because I think people see it as this literary classic and not something that really makes the most of its genre elements. It's a story a lot about nightmares. You hear a lot about the kids having nightmares and bad dreams in the book. You hear a lot about monsters and sort of intangible fears and what people see in the dark. And I would love to write an adaptation as if I already hadn't started doing that takes advantage of those more extreme genre elements and brings them to the forefront and makes it a pretty scary movie.
And who would you want to direct?
Jeremy Saulnier.
Yeah, that's a good go-to for you, but I think he'd nail some of that. I want to adapt a novel that has not been adapted yet, so I'm going to go with The Thief of Always by Clive Barker.
That is a great fucking story.
And I know at some point, I think it got stuck in development hell, and I think it was going to be an animated movie, which is probably the best avenue for that story.
Sure.
But now it would be, all this, CG, DreamWorksy kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I'd want it to be purely animated. But if I did a live action take on The Thief of Always, I would want it to be directed by Daniels, which is Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, who did Swiss Army Man.
Hell yeah. Same question, but a comic book art graphic novel?
I did not research this one. There's so many.
I'll give you mine.
Okay.
We've been waiting on an adaptation of Charles Burns's Black Hole.
Oh, yeah, this is joint answer. Absolutely Black Hole.
It was in development for a while. Like, I even had a director on board, Rick Famuyiwa, the guy who directed Dope.
Mm-hmm.
And this happened, I think, right after he left the Flash movie.
Sounds about right.
And we haven't heard anything about it since. So I don't think it's in development actively right now.
That seems like a perfect kind of Netflix project.
Yeah, and I think it would probably be more suited to a miniseries.
Yeah, 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah, just because it explores so many different characters' journeys and it kind of comes into their stories at odd times. It has a lingering question of, like, did this person complete what I would call a traditional arc? And for some of the characters, maybe not. But I think bringing some of those Charles Burns visual ideas to the screen would be a really interesting challenge. You know, he does so much interesting stuff with framing the images on the page. He really uses the page as an art form, not just individual frames. Like the entire page and the layout of it is really gorgeous.
Yeah, I can't think of a better answer. And then next one from Danny is, what movie ending made you the angriest?
I don't know if I get necessarily all that angry.
Yeah, I had a really hard time thinking. I mean, the last movie, and I know we've said it on the show a bunch of times, like the last movie I remember being like genuinely physically angry about was Star Trek Into Darkness. And at some point I'm going to make my peace with that. Like, I have not revisited it since I've seen it in the theater. And it's not specifically the ending. Like, the ending that I remember was quite infuriating, but I don't know. It's very rare for me to get angry at movies. Yeah,
movies don't piss me off a whole lot. I will say that the ending to Frank Darabont's The Mist is still a pretty sour.
That's a sore spot for you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I really do feel like I just loved the ending that the book had, which was a very open ending that even potentially had an element of hope in it, but it just sort of kept going. It was like a song that faded out. You know what I mean? Where you just feel like somewhere in another dimension, Belinda Carlisle is still singing about heaven is a place on earth. And I want to believe that. Yeah. And I liked believing that about The Mist. I fell in love with Stephen King's The Mist by reading the novella, but first I had sort of absorbed it through the audio drama, which was recorded in binaural sound.
Yeah, which is great. I have that.
It's pretty incredible. I have it on
They
CD.
re-released it when the movie was coming out. And
yeah.
It's wonderful. I highly recommend that.
And I would say it's the best adaptation of the source material, but I really do feel like Frank Darabont's movie is super good. And the only thing I don't like about it is how he decided to end it. I don't know if it makes me angry. Maybe. It's certainly disappointing.
It does.
Okay.
It does for you. I can say from when we've talked about it. And maybe one day we'll broach that subject on the show.
I do feel like people put too much emphasis on endings. Like, if a movie is like 95% great and then the last 5% of it you don't like, then people tend to think, oh, the whole thing's ruined.
Well, go talk to the cinema scores. That's our whole argument about cinema scores. Is like, those scores are really about how people feel about the ending of a movie.
Right. Well, it's how they feel when they walk out. Like, that was stupid.
Yeah. Next question from Danny is, what is your gore freak out? Hers is throat gore. Can't handle it.
Hands and fingers.
Oh, okay. Mine specifically wrists. I don't like seeing slit wrists.
Okay.
Even if it's the most simple effect, it still is ooky for me.
Yeah, it's real gross. But hands and fingers for me are very precious. I care a lot about my hands and my fingers. I am entirely dependent upon the function of my hands and fingers to do what I do for hobbies, to do what I do for work. If I didn't have that, I would be shit out of luck. So I'm very harm avoidant when it comes to my hands and my fingers. Even when somebody like pricks their finger in a movie, it's very painful. You know, this is why I think a lot of people, you know, when they see a paper cut, for instance, that's like too much. Like it's a paper cut really, really hurts. And it's a feeling we can all identify with. Like, paper cuts don't freak me out that much. Of course, I would prefer not to get paper cuts. Haven't had a good one in a long time. I'm long overdue for one. But I have certainly injured my hands in the kitchen. But boy, when somebody gets their hand real fucked up in a movie, I definitely take notice. I thought about in Pan's Labyrinth, there's a scene where the fascist assholes torture a guy with a stutter. And by the end of the time they're torturing him, his hand is basically split in two. Ugh. And that just haunts me.
Her next question is, who are some of your favorite female and non-binary critics? I'm going to go first because I have a huge list that I'm just going to rattle names off of.
Awesome. Please do.
Obviously, Danielle Ryan is one of our favorites.
Yeah, I'll second that. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, Lee Monson, Heather Wixon, Megan Navarro, Angie Han, Allison Wilmore. Excuse me if I mispronounce this. Huai Tran Bui. Sarah Sorrentino, Amelia Emberwing. I've worked with her, but she really is. I love her television reviews. Britt Hayes, Alice Collins, Lindsay Ellis, Karen Hahn, Lindsay Romaine, Michelle Swope, Courtney Howard, Carly Lane Perry. She doesn't do a whole lot of critic stuff, but she has written some really great articles over on Sci-Fi.
Yes.
April Wolfe, BJ Colangelo, Janet, and of course, classics like Janet Maslin and Pauline Kael. And I do like Amy Nicholson. I haven't kept up with her in a long time, but I've always liked her perspective. I'm sure there's a bunch more that I'm forgetting, but those are ones that I'm pretty regular, seeing their opinions, whether it be on Twitter or reading reviews or articles they write.
Yep, your list had some overlap with mine, so I'm going to show the audience who I think deserves a little bit more love. Jenna Stieber, she actually writes about video games and makes video content about video games for Polygon.com, but she is a horror movie aficionado and certainly a film critic in her own right. Jenna Stieber, her last name is spelled Stoeber. Tananarive Due, she is a film scholar. You will see her featured prominently in horror noir.
Yes.
She is an incredibly valuable voice in the cinematic landscape these days. Alyssa Wilkinson, who writes for Vox. I have read some incredible takes from her. Ingu Kang, Karen Hahn. I think you may have mentioned Karen Hahn. Mm-hmm. And Katie Hasty.
Go check all those people out. They're worth your time. And then Danny's last question is, you're teaching Genre Cinema 101. What 5 films do you make the class watch?
Night of the Living Dead.
Good one.
Alien.
Of course.
Deep Rising.
Okay.
Nosferatu.
That's on my list.
And The Avengers.
Okay.
And well, it's not necessarily that any one of those particular films is some untouchable classic. Most of them are. But I think they all exemplify certain things about genre cinema that I like explored. And then, of course, it's my course. It's my Genre Cinema 101. If I had to limit it just to 5 films, those are the ones I choose tonight. Maybe a different answer tomorrow, but, that's what I'm feeling tonight.
All right. I like it. Well, I went a very different route. I wanted to say, if you're going to do Genre Cinema 101 and I only have 5 films, I want to go back to basics. I want to be like, what are the foundations of different genres? So for horror, this isn't the first horror movie, but I think an important one would be Nosferatu.
Yep.
For science fiction, Metropolis.
Yes.
For action, I would actually say The Great Train Robbery.
There you go. Yeah.
It's extreme, it's short, but that is important in understanding what's still part of action film vocabulary. For fantasy, gotta do The Wizard of Oz.
There's no question about that one. Yeah.
And if I'm only going to get one last movie, it's going to be Jaws.
Sure. Yeah.
That's my personal favorite. And I'm like, this is the one that I think blends so many different kinds of genres. Like it's, because people are like, is Jaws a horror movie? It's like, it's a little bit of everything.
Sure. It's everything kids like.
Yeah, right? So I think it's like, it's a big jump forward, but I think that would give you a really good foundation in understanding genre cinema's roots, and then also seeing like, what is the movie that kind of rocketed genre cinema into what we think of as the modern day blockbuster.
Okay, next up is from TK421. They ask, have you ever lost those close to you due to professional or personal disagreements you had? And would you resolve them given the chance? Or have you already? What was it over? And given the chance, would you go back and prevent that from happening?
Whew, heavy.
Very heavy, but an excellent question.
Yeah, I mean, there's a specific example that I thought of, and I'm not going to name any names or anything, but it was pretty much my best friend, like somebody who was very, very close to, I spent a lot of time with. And just the realization that they were not who they said they were, that they were making up a lot of stories, and it became very hard to know what they were being genuine about and what they kind of believed in, because it was just one of those kind of people that they were a certain way around whoever they were around to best act the way they thought they needed to act in front of that person. And I don't think I would prevent it. I mean, I'm glad that person was in my life. It was a valuable lesson, and not to say that I didn't have good times with them, but that was just a chapter in my life that needed to happen and needed to end.
Yes. I mostly feel the same way about my personal disagreements. Like, one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about the section that I had in my life regarding the ska band is that was the first time I had ever had a project that I love fall apart, and for it to feel right that it fell apart. For instance, I took part in making a movie in high school, and the reason that kind of fell apart had to do with silly things like teen romance and things like that. And ultimately, I'm fine with that, but the band thing was the first thing that really hurt when that fell apart, because we were pretty good for a bunch of teenagers that played ska music. We were pretty good. And would I resolve them given the chance? I don't really know if there is any way to resolve it. And if given the chance to resolve it, I doubt it. I think it was sort of a necessary thing, for that particular group of people to go their own separate ways, because it became obvious that there were some incompatibilities brewing. Would I prevent that from happening? I mean, you're asking somebody who's a big revisionist. Part of the big thing that I had to talk about in therapy is I had this time in my life where the band fell apart, and then I flunked out of college and was super depressed. And it's would I go back in time to prevent those things from happening? That's one of the big things that, haunted me for a long time. It's I wish I just had a do-over. I wish I could just do that over again. A big part of me still wants to say, yeah, of course, I'd love to go back in time and prevent bad things from happening to me. To say nothing of the other people that were involved. Of course, I can't take their perspectives into account. It certainly does sound selfish that I'm not taking them into account, but I don't know fully how those other people felt about it. That's a messy and complicated answer to a very interesting and complicated question.
That was our therapy question for this episode.
Yeah. Now, for instance, if I go back and listen to that ska stuff, is it a little painful to listen to? Absolutely. But the pride of that I actually went and made good stuff, it way overrides that. You can listen to that if you're curious. Just look up The Kim Basinger Band, and it'll eventually just take you to a Bandcamp page where there's an album we made up there, our only full length album. It's pretty good. It's got some lyrics that sound like teenagers wrote them, because they did.
Yeah.
But we were pretty good, all things aside. TK421 also asks, what random movie scene could be anything do you end up thinking about for no reason at all on the reg?
It's probably going to be the scene in Hannibal where Hannibal kills Giancarlo Giannini. It's specifically because he says, "Okie dokie, here we go." Yeah, and that's something I say very regularly in my everyday life. So whenever I say it, I think of that scene.
It's definitely very, very, very quotable.
Yeah, I will just say it in passing. It's that. It's also, I think it's the first Jackass movie. Bam falls during a skating stunt, and then he just looks directly at the camera and goes, "Ow, fuck."
Is that one where he falls off the roof?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I say every time I stub my toe or accidentally hurt myself. Yeah, just ow, fuck. So those are probably the two for me.
That's pretty good. There's probably several movie scenes that we keep coming back to throughout the course of the show.
Well, that for sure.
That certainly pop up in my head a lot. I think about the scene in the first Alien where for whatever reason, they just decide to linger a little bit longer on Ian Holmes' character. And he does this weird jogging in place thing that makes you go, fuck's this guy doing?
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, it's a nice little Easter egg to his eventual character reveal, but
yeah,
it's just a little moment that's like, oh, there's something weird about this guy.
Yeah, there's a little odd. It's like, what the hell's going on with this guy? I like that little bit. There are also just some like really funny little things that happen in movies that really tickle my pickle. That don't have a whole lot to do with the movies themselves. The scene in Jaws where anytime Hooper and Quint are arguing,
well, that's just gold.
The sort of dick measuring stuff that goes on between Hooper and Quint is always somewhere in the back of my brain. Just that moment where Hooper makes faces at Quint as soon as his back is turned, just like spreads his mouth real wide, and puts
I got
his
another
hands
one
up to
that's
his fucking ears.
I got another one that's from that is when he's Hooper's driving the boat, and he's just like, "Arr, Jim boy, arr! Don't have to take this abuse much longer."
Or when Quint says, "Hooper drives the boat, chief."
This is great. Oh, that's a good question.
So the answer is the mind is a constantly rotating, constantly whirling cinema. Carousel of like weird little scenelets from movies.
Exactly.
What is your favorite animated film? Think hard. What is your animated film? What is your favorite animated film? Think hard.
Asking us, I mean, I really thought, because there's so many that have been so important to me.
Yeah.
And it really came, I couldn't pick just one. I had to go with two. Because one is like, this is probably the animated movie I've seen the most and kind of meant a whole lot to me in a certain way. And I hate to be that guy, but it's Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Like, that movie is very integral in my childhood. But if I'm talking about like the animated film where I love the animation and I can just watch it, but I also love the movie, and like, I love the animation in Batman Mask of the Phantasm, but it's grounded and doing its Batman thing. It's not exploring what animation can do in like a broader sense. I think Dumbo. Yeah,
Dumbo is very, very good. It's certainly an indisputable classic.
And I mean, the pink elephant scene alone, it's like, wow, this is, wonderfully weird and trippy and doing weird things with color and design. And it's just I love that movie. It's so beautiful.
I do have quite an affinity for Spirited Away. I know that's, this is all sort of modern stuff. There are animated classics that I love to watch. Chuck Jones's stuff. Chuck Jones is the Grinch. Any number of things that he had done for Looney Tunes as well. I absolutely love. But I really do have quite a big affinity for Spirited Away. I'm not huge on anime or Japanese animated films, but Spirited Away is definitely a really special film. Anything by Satoshi Kon is particularly interesting too. I love Perfect Blue. It's certainly not an easy movie to watch, but I really do love it a lot. It's deeply frightening.
Where's that Criterion?
Yeah, right. There is a Scream Factory for it, so
okay,
or a Shout Factory rather. Anyway, let's see. Do you ever think we'll truly see the end of studios trying to go back and attempt to recapture lightning in a bottle twice? It's hard to see millions of dollars wasted in an attempt to capitalize off nostalgia when those creative minds and big money dollars
no whammies,
could be spent making something original. Even if it flops, who cares? I would just like to hear your take on originality missing from the movies. Or maybe I'm just wrong and haven't been looking hard enough for it. Maybe you could point me in the right direction.
I know that there was a previous Ask Us Anything episode where we got a question like this about, like, do you ever think we'll see a kind of 4-quadrant, totally brand new original IP in film? There's plenty of stuff out there, definitely in the indie circle. I think in that episode we talked about, like, you have to be your best curator, and it can involve being active.
Yeah, well, find evangelists who evangelize the kind of stuff that you never ever hear about. The money that TK421 is talking about, these big money dollars, is marketing money.
Yes.
We tend to think about a lot of money to get a movie made, but the kind of money to get a movie marketed so that people know to go see it on a certain day, that's a fucking insane amount of money.
And it's just, there's just more platforms than there've ever been with streaming and VOD and stuff. I do think as a student of film history, we will reach the 60s again, where, at the time, the studios were putting tons of tons of big money dollars into these musicals that nobody was going to see, and they were losing huge amounts of money because they weren't speaking to the current cultural climate and the younger audience. And I think that will happen again. Maybe it won't even be in our lifetimes, but I do think that the big studios that control this stuff, that they will find whatever is missing and exploit it. That's what they're going to do. But as far as, pointing you in the right direction for originality, there's plenty of stuff out there, but it's also stuff that you're going to have to take a risk on because it's going to be lower budget. It may have bigger ideas than the means to execute those ideas.
Mm-hmm. Ambition outweighs its means to actually match up with that ambitious idea.
Right.
But I have found countless little no-name indies that were totally worth my time by just going to the iTunes store, going to the movies page, and scrolling down to the section that says Recent Discoveries. Up there right now is Darlin', which is the sequel to The Woman, which is based on the Lucky McKee movie, which is based on the Jack Ketchum. Mm-hmm. Those novels, those cannibal novels that he wrote. So it's out there. This kind of stuff is out there. It's interesting. But there's no marketing money behind it. There might be enough money to get the movie made and for the movie to be pretty cool. But the money to actually, create a marketing campaign that's effective enough to win the attention war and reach your eyes and make you remember, like, how many times do you have to see a movie ad before you truly know when you can actually go see it in the movie theater? It's hard these days, unless it's a huge blockbuster, to know exactly when you can go see a movie in the movie theater. There are movies right now that are released by people like A24 or, other distributors, smaller distributors that don't come out at one given time across the United States. You have to wait and see when they're going to show up. You got to be your own advocate. You got to find out when the hell these movies are actually going to be available for you to go see them. So, part of that responsibility is on you.
And I'll say this, because this has obviously been part of GenreVision. Dig into the library. If there's stuff that's coming out that's not interesting you right now, do some research, look into movies that you like and see what, similarities or, what other movies get recommended. And if there's something that you haven't seen that's a library title, check it out. Yeah,
I really do think people have an aversion to stuff they'd never heard of. Take a risk. It's all about taking a risk. TK421, the last thing they say is, also, I know this seems out there, but I would just like to make a request for you guys to cover the first season of Friends.
I mean,
can we be honest about sitcoms for a minute here?
Drew
and I have a rather extreme aversion to American studio sitcoms.
I would say specifically like multicam, laugh track / studio audience.
Yeah.
Non-cinematic sitcoms.
Right. Anything that's like a single camera setup that's a little bit more cinematic, that doesn't have a laugh track, we find it's a lot easier to watch. But anything that was shot on a soundstage with that sort of fakeness to it, it doesn't really play all that well. There's a lot of great sitcoms out there. For instance, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I Love Lucy. Those classics are classics for a reason. They're wonderful. But to get us to actually sit down and watch them episode after episode after episode, I don't think it's going to happen, my friend.
Yeah, it's not my kind of comfort food, which I know it is for a lot of people, and it's just not something that I find a whole lot of discussion to bubble up from. It'll just be like, yeah, that was effective, or no, it wasn't. I don't find a whole lot. And that's not to say it isn't there. That's just my perspective.
Sure.
I don't find that. So I don't think we'll ever do. And I don't know, Friends doesn't really fit in with our GenreVision mold. We can fall back on that. But I can say this. I really don't think I've seen an entire episode of Friends ever.
I know I haven't. Yeah, it's just not something I've ever really had an interest in. Same goes for other 90s era, now regarded as classic sitcoms. I have no interest in Seinfeld.
No, me neither. Sorry.
Have you ever been to Ireland or the UK? Asks Rory.
No.
Nope.
I've not.
Would love to.
Would love to go, especially Ireland.
Okay.
Yeah, next one from Rory is, I know you love Deep Blue Sea, but does Saffron Burrows give an awful performance in that movie, or is it just the way she's written?
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
I don't think she's bad. I get it. Like, it's because she's an unlikable character. I think that's kind of baked into her performance. And we talked about on our Finflix episode, she was so unliked that when she survived in the original cut of the movie and got the big heroic kiss at the end, test audiences hated it, and they specifically said it's like she was the villain, she needs to be punished. So I don't think she gives an awful performance, and I don't think she's written poorly. But I do think she's a pretty, if not a hardcore villain, she's definitely very villainous.
Yeah, well, the movie definitely moralizes when it comes to her, and it makes a moral judgment against her. In the end. Next up from Rory.
Next one he has is a Brian De Palma or John Carpenter film fest. De Palma edges it for them. Man, that's tough. I think they're both worthwhile, obviously. I think I like more Carpenter films, but I think De Palma's the more interesting filmmaker in terms of his actual filmmaking. But De Palma also leans on the same bag of tricks visually, and I think that might get a little samey during a film festival. I think Carpenter would have better variety.
You're probably right. I think De Palma might still edge it out for me. Like, both of their film output in terms of quality took a dive. I don't know if you've seen like Brian De Palma's recent work, like Passion.
No, I haven't seen Passion, I haven't even seen his like 2000 stuff like Femme Fatale, which I know wasn't very reviewed well, and I know his most recent movie Domino is kind of an unfinished movie. Yeah,
with Nicolette Coster-Waldau.
Yeah,
it hasn't been great from those two guys, and like the last few movies that John Carpenter made, not great.
I never saw The Ward, and I heard nothing good about it.
Yeah, for good reason. It's just not very good.
Yeah.
What was the first movie you two bonded over? Rory asks.
I thought about this for a long time. I have to imagine it's one of the tag team reviews that we did for Chud. So it's probably going to be like It Follows or maybe Jurassic World.
Probably.
Jurassic World's not a movie we liked, but I think we found such an interesting place to discuss that movie that it kind of brought out the best in both of us for the first time.
For sure. What's next?
Next one from Rory is, was Armie Hammer too old for Call Me By Your Name? I love his performance, but didn't buy him as a 24-year-old. I didn't see this, so Travis?
Well, the question is, does he seem too old in the film for 24? Yeah.
So do most actors.
Yeah, I think what's more important is like the performance is great, and they didn't want to hire somebody who was 24 but wasn't pulling off the kind of level of performance that the character needed. They have to go in the end with who's going to offer the stronger performance, and I can't really see anybody else in that role. I think Armie Hammer's really good in it. Oh man, favorite Jerry Goldsmith score? Fuck, that is a great question.
I mean, there's way too many to count. He has like over 100 credits, and he's been working for a long time. So if I was going to pull just a couple, I love the Legend score, especially after we did our episode on it. Obviously Gremlins, because Gremlins, and Alien. I mean, you can't beat Alien. It's Alien.
No, you can't beat Alien. The Gremlins 2 score as well, the way it leans into cartoonery just in the way the film does, it is an incredible score, but I would probably have to go with Alien.
I'd also think all three of his scores for the Omen trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
He got to make a song called Ave Satane, Hail Satan, and that got nominated for Best Song at the Oscars. That alone gives me so much to love about him. But they're all he does very cool variations on the Omen theme throughout all three movies. So definitely, I think those are some big ones for me. Next one from Rory is, does anyone really need straight pride? Easy answer. No.
No, I mean, this is certainly a complicated question that delves into, like, what does it mean to be proud of who you are? The only thing that people don't take into account when they ask, like, why can't I be proud of who I am is, like, how long have I been able to be outwardly proud of who I am?
He specifically says, does anyone need straight pride? And straight and pride are capitalized. And I think it's like,
well, and put in quotes as well. So
as like a movement or something. It's like, no, those things are about, representing and being proud for underserved and marginalized and frankly, in a lot of cases, harassed outlets of society.
Well, I'm gonna fall back on one of my favorite intelligent bro movies from a man named Christopher Nolan, in which the Batman says, "It's not who I am, but what I do that defines me."
Oh, there you go. I mean, yeah.
If you want to be proud of who you are, be proud of what you do. If you do good things and you treat people well, take pride in that. If you're just trying to be bent out of shape because there's a gay pride parade, go be bent out of shape somewhere else. I don't want to hear about it.
yeah, that's fair enough.
Whatever, man.
Next one from Rory is, have either of you seen After Dark, My Sweet? Jason Patric is phenomenal in that movie. I didn't even research this. I have no idea what this is.
I also have no idea what it is, but I am thoroughly intrigued. Thank you, Rory.
It's a fantastic title. I love that title. And the last one from Rory is, should only trans actors play trans characters / gay actors play gay characters? I understand the need for more representation, but as a gay man, I'm worried that we're moving closer to a place where actors are vilified for what should be seen as a performance and not a reflection of the actors. This is a solve the world type question.
Oh boy, this is a sticky wicket, my friend.
I mean, in a perfect world, a lot of people like to say this, in a perfect world, the best person is the one who gets the job. It's not, we don't live in a perfect world. I want representation to increase across all boards. I want gay actors playing straight characters. I want it. I'm just selfish. I want it all.
Sure. But like, you're also coming from an actor's perspective on this, where an actor's ability is judged by their degree to which they can like be a chameleon, to which they can sort of fit any role. There's definitely some bragging rights to be won, and like, I played this character who's not like me at all.
Sure.
That sort of is lampooned very, very well in Tropic Thunder with Robert Downey Jr.'s character.
Right. No, it's true. I mean, I understand an actor's perspective of that's part of the challenge. You want to dig into yourself and see like, what can I do? What part of this do I understand and identify with? But I also understand why people get upset when, a character gets whitewashed, or, a historically gay figure, gets a biopic done and they're played by a straight actor or something. I totally understand it, because it's really, I think it's more about, we just want that kind of representation in these roles that get, headlines and get marketing and get notoriety.
Certainly. I think this is a journey, and where we're at in this journey is, particularly with trans actors, let's say, or trans characters, we're not quite there with representation yet. I think with actors of color, for instance, we've reached a point where like representation is being celebrated in a way that I think is really cool. Nuance is on the way. Like, nuance is starting to happen with characters being not only represented, but being shown in ways that are nuanced and interesting and are coming from places of authenticity. With trans characters and gay characters, we're not there yet. We're not even to representation yet properly, I don't think. But there is this idea that I think is worth examining, that it can be potentially beneficial for your average straight audience person to see a performer, an actor, a movie star that they are familiar with, and that they have an idea, a concrete idea of who that person is, to be able to examine them from another angle. Because this is what potentially could happen in some fashion with a member of their family. They could grow up thinking that a member of their family is a certain way, and then something about them comes to light and that forces them to see them from a different angle. It could potentially open up a place of understanding in a person's brain who doesn't have enough understanding about what it means to come out of the closet as trans or gay or any sort of place on the queer spectrum, or people being able to examine someone they know in a different light and to be accepting of that is certainly important. Do I think more trans actors should be playing more trans characters in fiction? You bet your ass I do.
Yes, I agree.
I think it's sad we're not there yet, but I think we'll get there.
Hopefully. I have hope. Next batch questions is from Tim Langford, and his first question is about, he says, he's a high school teacher, and I've introduced podcast creations within one of my classes. Your discussions have always seemed structurally sound and strong, so I'm wondering, how do you guys navigate your discussions? Is there an outline sitting in front of you? How do you manage transitions between speakers and topics? I know you guys chat beforehand. Is there a brief planning conversation, and what does that often look like? And actually, we talked a little bit about this in our recent pre-show banter episode on our Patreon at patreon.com/GenreVision. And that episode is available for all listeners to see what the kind of stuff we've got over on the Patreon. So I would direct you, Tim, to that episode to hear a little bit about what goes into the pre-show of a GenreVision episode. But I know, Travis, you have a couple of specific points here that he mentions that you wanted to respond to.
Sure. With GenreVision, the navigation of discussions these days is mostly based on the progression of the plot of the film. We just tend to kind of go through our notes chronologically. We do have to be careful with movies where there is spoilable information. We have a fairly solid template for how to make a GenreVision episode, and there's not a whole lot of conscious effort that has to go into it to make sure that it stays on the rails. We've just been making it for so long, week after week after week, that it's kind of just felt more so than planned.
Yeah, we don't like share notes with each other, or we don't have anything written. We've just kind of figured out the rhythm between us. But I know you had something specifically you wanted to reference in regards to transitions between speakers and topics.
Sure, yeah, there is an art to segues, and there used to be, back in the earlier days of the show, you would try to make a segue by saying, and this actually makes for a good segue into another topic. Or in fact, you called out the segue as a segue, and I believe that's not a good segue.
Well, thank you for putting me on blast, but
but it's the funny thing is there's an art to it that is not easy to learn. One of the great segue masters of podcasting is John August, who is a screenwriter. He's actually the guy that wrote Big Fish. He is definitely a tremendous resource for screenwriting, and in his podcast, he is excellent at segues. Speaking of such and such, that actually brings us into so-and-so. It's very, very, very organic the way that he does that, and he was sort of who I looked to when it came to transitioning from one topic to the next.
Well, speaking of transitioning from one topic to the next, that makes a great segue to Tim's next question.
You son of a bitch.
Tim asks, what is your relationship to movie theater food and drink? I love them too much to the point where we've kind of had to separate a little bit. I think I'm over popcorn 100%.
Movie theater food and drink and I never had a particularly strong relationship. We've been broken up for a long time. Occasionally, okay, I will get a cocktail at the Zhuzhi movie theater that I go to.
Oh, yeah. That sounds about right. I mean, when I was living in LA and I went to the ArcLight, I always got their whiskey sour. It was delicious.
But it's on a rare occasion now that I do that, because, I've had instances where I sit down in the movie theater with my cocktail and it's like 20 minutes in, my brain's going, hey, Travis, lights out. Lights out, buddy. Close them peepers.
Mine is, I always want to have something to drink because, hydrating, but I shouldn't do it because I know it's like I'm gonna have to pee in an hour and a half, and so I will get like the smallest drink possible. And sometimes if I haven't like had lunch and I'm usually having like daytime screenings, maybe I'll get like a movie theater hot dog. That's about it.
Yep. All right. What were your first 2 or 3 jobs? Tim asks.
Well, my first job only lasted a couple months. I was a cashier at a Publix, which I know that's kind of like a Southeast thing. It's just a grocery store, chain grocery store. And then I also worked as an usher at a movie theater, local movie theater chain called Marquee Cinemas. I did get to do some projectionist work while I worked there, and that was when they were still actually showing movies on film. So I learned how to load a film projector to show a movie and, cut together the film reels that they sent us. It was a brief time, and it was shortly just before I left that job. And then the third one, I worked at a bookstore, Books A Million chain, for a long time. I was just a cashier, and then eventually the person who took care of the giant magazine section in the back of the store.
My first job was working in my dad's company when I was in high school. And I did that while I was in my junior and senior year of high school, I believe. And then the summer before college started. And then a couple months into my freshman year of college, I applied at the Apple store near me and started working at the Apple store. I was there for just over 5 years. And then I got fired. And then I was basically kind of a travel agent for an agency that did travel exclusively to places where people could gamble. It was basically a travel agent for casinos, and I did that for a couple months and had to quit because it was awful. Like, the guy I was working for was a real nut. Anyway, that was my first 3 jobs.
Next one from Tim is, when you think of movies that made you weep on first watch, what comes to mind?
Oh, man. There is this short in front of Big Hero 6 where there's this little dog that's trying to make, Feast is trying to make his owner happy. And it's like the owner, I think it's all nonverbal. They imply that the owner has gone through a breakup. Like, there's a woman that used to be in his life that's not anymore. And it stays on the dog for a little bit.
It's like all from the dog's perspective, the way they frame it.
Yeah, but like there's one point where they cut to a close-up of the guy, and it's clear that he's in like a pretty deep depression. And not just like my girlfriend broke up with me funk, but like a pretty deep depression. And I had to like practically shove corks in my eyes in the movie theater to stop from like sobbing and weeping out loud. Like it struck me very hard.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I thought of for this one that immediately came to mind, Spike Jonze's Where the Wild Things Are. A moment at the end when Max is leaving, there's this one monster that hasn't spoken at all throughout the movie, and everybody says like, oh yeah, you don't want to talk to him. Like, nobody talks to him. There's something wrong with him. And at the very end, he finally speaks, and he just says, Max, when you go back, will you tell them good things about us? And I was feeling a lot of things in that movie, but I was keeping it together. And when he said that, I don't know, the dam broke, and I just became it's one of the messiest moments in a movie theater I've ever had, where it was like I was clearly trying to keep it together through the whole movie.
Sure.
And then that, for whatever reason, I still don't know. I've never revisited that movie because it hit me so deeply. And the other one that I thought of, and I think I mentioned this for some reason recently, was when I saw Creed. Like, the ending of Creed, when it's, the fight's done and the person, the interviewer comes up to him and asks him, like, if you could say something to your father, what would you say? And Adonis just like, I just want to tell him that I love him, and I'm proud of him, and I hope he's proud of me. And I was crying. But then this theater that's just full of men, like I won't say the full packed house or anything, but the whole theater is men, and everyone is sobbing. Like, yeah. It was this wonderful moment of like, yeah, we're all having this moment of understanding our masculinity and the sensitivity that's there, and it, like, knowing that everybody else was crying was making me cry more.
Yeah, no, I had to hold back quite a few tears in Paddington and Paddington 2. Roma is a movie I had quite a few problems with, but when the movie's central drama actually comes forward and becomes the meat of the movie, it has a couple of scenes that are just completely devastating. And your boy wept a lot. There's a movie called Summer 1993 that was actually recommended to me by listener Palefire. Hi, Palefire. The last scene in this movie fucking wrecked me, dude. Big time.
Yeah, we're softies, so it, but those are definitely ones that come to mind. Next one from Tim. Favorite films out of South Korea. I'm going to be very basic here. This is the trifecta: Old Boy, The Host, I Saw the Devil.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd probably have to agree with that because I really didn't have much of a knowledge of what kind of movies or the quality of movies that South Korea was putting out until Oldboy sort of broke the barrier.
Yeah, no, it was absolute. Oldboy was the first South Korean movie I ever saw.
Yeah, no, I believe that's true of me too. Actually, no, maybe Tale of Two Sisters was the first South Korean movie I ever saw.
Okay.
And boy, did that movie scare the piss out of me when I first saw it.
I didn't see that movie until we did it for the show.
Pretty good flick.
But yeah, I mean, there's been tons of great movies and movies made by South Korean directors. But I would say, like, if you're going to go for the trifecta that made me pay attention to South Korean film, it's Oldboy, The Host, I Saw the Devil.
For sure. What's the longest you've waited in line for something, asks Tim.
It's probably going to be like some ride at a theme park like Disneyland.
Yeah, I think it's one of the houses at Halloween Horror Nights for me, probably.
Yeah, that's back when I was younger, too. I probably waited, close to an hour and a half or 2 hours in line.
Yep, same here.
So yeah, that sounds about right. Next one from Tim. What aspect of each other's personality are you most proud of? Okay, I'm going to like turn this on its head and make it something that's actually helped inform me. And I've said this before, is Travis made me a better critic. And because Travis was the first person to ever and this is going to make, please don't take this the wrong way. Travis kind of put forward the idea in my head that he's like, I don't believe that there's anything that there's anything as a perfect movie. And at that point in my life and through most of my life, I was like, oh yeah, all these movies that I love are perfect and there's no flaws or anything. And when he planted that seed in my head, it really made me like reassess all these movies I had grown up with and been like, well, I think he's right. Like they're saying something's perfect is kind of an easy way of just saying, I really, really love it. And I don't want there to be anything wrong with it. And so I'm really proud of his like ability. Like I think for some people it may come off as like it's too critical, but I actually value that a lot because I'm a pretty easy sell on things. And it's important for me as somebody who wants to think critically about art and specifically movies, to have that in my life. So I'm really proud of just like Travis of being able to remove himself, I think, a lot and try and be as critical about something, even if it's something that, he or I knows that we're almost in the bag for. And it really has made me a better consumer of art.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I am most proud to work with Drew because you're not precious about anything that you do.
That's why I said this exact thing recently on our third times episode about Dark Knight. It's talking about being precious about things. And if there's anything you would think I'd be precious about, it's Batman.
Right. And your willingness to examine anything from a hey, let's just throw this on the table. Let's figure out how we feel about it. Pretty honestly. And this actually not only comes up when we're doing film criticism, but when you and I are actually talking about the things that we do as art. This podcast is something that we do as a pastime and as a hobby, but it is something that we create week after week after week. every single episode is a piece of art, however low key or low effort. And then the podcast itself is an art. If that sounds pretentious, just think that art doesn't have to have many qualifications to be considered art. A lot of people will say like, oh, that is art, as if that, as it aspires to something higher. No, art is mostly trash. But that actually
Travis Newton 2019. Art is mostly trash.
What is fun about that idea is that it actually makes art way more accessible.
Yeah, it makes it more fun.
Potentially lowers the barrier to entry into art, where you're not feeling some sort of pressure to make a masterpiece or consider something a masterpiece, where you can actually sort of humanize art a little bit. People feel intimidated often by modern art when they think, well, I could have done that. Well, the simple truth of the matter is, like, if you're confronted by a challenging piece of modern art that you could have made, the fact of the matter is you didn't.
I think you've said that exact thing on another Ask Us Anything episode. Yeah.
It's that reaction, the ability to not be precious with our reactions about anything is something that I'm extraordinarily proud of when I get to work with you. Like I'm proud to work with you because of that and many other aspects.
Well, I think it just makes it makes us a better conduit for better material when we're not taking things personally. When it's like, if I throw a movie out there, it's like, yeah, this is a movie I'd really like to do for the show. And Travis has an argument as to why he doesn't want to do it, why we shouldn't do it. I'm not going to get grumpy about like, well, I really want to do that. Like, because it's like, no, then that's not the best thing for the show.
Sure. But if you also say, I really wanted to do that, I'm inclined to listen to your argument because you and I know how to make the point.
We are doing Joker this year. So that's a good argument for it. And then the next one from Tim is, each of you should make a top 5 of something, movies or not, without telling the other person what the category is, and then see if they can figure out the category. I did this.
Okay.
So, number 5. Squeeze It. Number 4. Apple juice. Number 3. Raspberry soda.
It's sweet beverages that you enjoyed as a child.
Drinks from childhood.
Well, as soon as you said squeeze it and then apple juice, I'm like, this kid's 7. This kid is 7 right now.
Yes, exactly. And the other 2 were Verner's ginger soda, which is the best of all ginger ales and ginger sodas. And number 1 is Yoo-Hoo.
Okay.
All right. Do you have one?
Sure.
Okay.
Dungeness. Blue. Stone. King. Hermit.
Are these your favorite tarot cards?
No, they're crabs.
Oh, okay.
And hermit crabs are the best crabs because they get to fucking decorate. You know what I mean?
They have style. They're all about the fashion.
The other ones are all delicious, and they were ranked in according to deliciousness, but really no crab ever beats hermit crabs. They're just delightful.
They're cute. They're so cute. We had pet hermit crabs when I think in 3rd grade, and they were some of my favorite like classroom pets of all time.
Tim Langford offers a bonus. He says, pitch your version of the very first Pixar film to receive an R rating.
You got one for this?
Yeah, The Bad Dinosaur.
The Bad Dinosaur.
It's basically just a remake of Carnosaur.
It's just the Pixar version of Carnosaur. Mine would be a Toy Story in-between-quel, which tells us the story of Sid post the first movie, where he's gone insane after seeing the toys come to life, and it's warping his view of reality. And I basically want it to be like the Jacob's Ladder of Pixar movies.
Okay.
So there you go.
Now, I did have an idea for an R-rated Leica film that I think would be way more interesting than an R-rated Pixar film.
Okay, what's that?
Well, when I was watching Paranorman, and I was like, man, these motherfuckers can make a pretty cool zombie movie. Mm-hmm. I was like, well, you know what? If there were to be a new Evil Dead film, I'd want it to be made by Leica.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Like,
because then you can
think
have
of what kind of things you could pull off with stop motion that you really can't do in live action. Sam Raimi, I think, would be really, really well suited to the format.
Definitely. I think that would be very liberating for him.
For sure.
I like that. I love it. Next one is from our good friend T-Bones McRoanoke. You have to eat from one restaurant for the rest of your life. Caveat. It has to be a restaurant where you order food from a drive-thru. Where are you getting supersized?
If I had to pick one,
this is hell. This is hell for Travis. I knew my answer instantly.
I mean, it's not. It just makes me feel. It just makes me feel like shit.
I mean, my answer, because I had to think about enough variety, and I need a good dessert menu. I think Sonic. They've got enough different like ice creams and stuff that I can satisfy that. Their breakfast stuff is fine. There's enough there. Like this was a difficult one in terms of like, well, I don't want to pick, McDonald's or Taco Bell or whatever. It was like, yeah, Sonic.
I mean, Sonic's fine. I don't know. If I had to go for like quality of ingredients, though, I might pick, I don't know, In-N-Out, maybe. But that's like based on quality of ingredients. But like, if there's one place that like I consistently crave, like the strongest cravings for, it's McDonald's. Like it's that particular set of flavors that I, will have a craving for most strongly. I don't know. That's when I'm craving a certain specific fast food flavor, more often than not, it's McDonald's. It's a rarity, but It's true.
I do love the big breakfast.
I haven't had a McDonald's breakfast in
you hate
know,
it
since the crucifixion, but I do love a Big Mac. Anyway, Conan Zilla asks, "What's a geekdom that you loved, then hated, then came back to? Why?"
I couldn't think of one that I would say I outright hated, but one that I fell away from for a long time and then came back to was Star Trek. And there's an article I wrote about it for Fandom, which was called Star Trek Taught Me Hope. So if you want to just Google, my name and then Star Trek Taught Me Hope, you'll find that article. And it has a lot to do with my dad and his, introducing me to Star Trek, and then our relationship and his eventual passing, and then me returning to Star Trek and finding out that I really did love it. I can't think of one that I came around to like hating, but Star Trek was something like I kind of liked it as a kid and was interested. And then I kind of got disaffected and was like, yeah, Star Trek's like too bright and shiny for me. It's got to be dark and, because I'm an angsty teen.
Sure. I don't really know if I had a particular geekdom that I felt I had to abandon because I hated it. And then came back. I actually don't know if there is that applies to me. Of course, I went through the same thing that a lot of Star Wars fans of my age went through, where like the prequels came out and we were all like, yeesh. And, we were kind of grateful that it was done. But then, in a lot of ways, Star Wars made an interesting recovery and an interesting evolution. And I certainly like talking about Star Wars, but it's something that I can't talk about too much. Like there's got to be a healthy cap on the amount that I can actually talk about Star Wars. I love it. And I still know a lot about Star Wars, but there is definitely a cap on like how much Star Wars conversation can be considered healthy or interesting.
I would agree with that. Another one from Conan Zilla is, "You two have become a fountain of recommendations for me. High Rise, House, the work of Neil Breen, which is all unforgivably, terribly awesome. Can you think of anything that one of you recommends but the other loathes?" First of all, thank you, Conan Zilla. That's really cool. We love hearing that we're a fountain of recommendations. Oh boy, Travis will find some arty, talky, black and white French film from 1968 that, is perfect for me. I don't know. I think it's probably going to be like a movie Travis hasn't seen. I keep trying to get him to watch Punisher Warzone, but I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Oh no, I don't think I'm afraid of that movie. I'm sure I'll watch it one of these days.
Maybe. I mean,
I have a problem with the Punisher as a cultural symbol. Like as a character, it's fine, but I think it's been co-opted by some really bad people.
Yes.
Let's see. Man. I really can't think of a movie that I love that I would recommend to people that you absolutely loathe.
I can't, like, I'm drumming it up. It's like, well, it's probably something that you would just be like, yeah, it wasn't really for me. Like, I can't think of something to be like, a litmus test of like, oh man, I really like this, but Travis is gonna hate it.
I mean, I recommend My Night at Maud's to people. I think that's a pretty good flick. When cool. you talked about it on the podcast with Nick Murray, you were like, "This is the Frenchiest fucking piece of shit I've ever seen."
It is.
I think you would come around. Like you're now into Drew Deitch. You're not the same Drew Deitch you were back in them days.
No, but I am by no means going to go out of my way to see those kinds of movies. Like it's just. It has to come from strong recommendation. Probably we're going to have to be making content out of it. And I'll certainly examine things, but it's just not my bag, baby.
Sure. I got you.
Next one from Conan Zilla. What do we got?
They say remakes as a fad come and go, with some artists getting more than their share of remake love. John Carpenter, Disney cartoons. Sure, most remakes suck, but we do get the occasional The Fly. What's something you could remake if you could? What's a remake that you would banish from this earth?
You got some for these?
That Lion King remake can fuck right off.
Hey, we both had the same banish from this earth answer. Yeah, no, I have no time for something like that. It seems completely uninteresting to me. That doesn't mean it has zero value. There's, value in representation in the acting, and
sure,
certainly for making strides in digital artistry, but otherwise, I think it's pretty creatively bankrupt.
As a cinematic exercise, to take away all the aspects of representation, it's like, why? Why?
It just doesn't look interesting in any way to me. There's nothing in it as a movie that interests me at all. Something you could remake if you could. You got one?
Yeah, I would like to write a remake of American Werewolf in London.
Ooh, so you're going to take on that because this is interesting because my remake's also a werewolf movie.
Really?
Yeah, I want to remake Silver Bullet.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, would you be remaking Silver Bullet or would you just be readapting Cycle of the Werewolf?
See, that's the thing. I can get away with it. Like I can say that I'm really making a new adaptation of Cycle of the Werewolf, and maybe it would be called that. Silver Bullet's probably a better title.
It is,
and would be recognizable to people because it's a remake. So it would probably be called Silver Bullet. So I'd be like, yeah, that's a remake of Silver Bullet. But really, it's like I just want a really awesome, great, beautiful version of Cycle of the Werewolf.
Okay. Conanzilla asks another question. They ask, favorite odd couplings and why? Tango and Cash, Murtaugh and Riggs, Treat Williams and Kevin J. O'Connor. Wow, what I wouldn't give for Deep Rising 2, Rising Deeper. Amen, Conanzilla. We too wish for a Deep Rising 2 starring Kevin J. O'Connor and Treat Williams.
That's definitely playing in my cinema of heaven. I have a couple that I wrote down for this. Favorite odd couples: Terrence Mann and Don Keith Opper in Critters, more specifically Critters 2. This is one I have not thought of in a long time, but for whatever reason came into my brain when we got asked this question. Melanie Linsky and Kate Winslet in Heavenly Creatures.
That's pretty good.
Movie nobody talks about anymore. That movie's really good.
Yeah, it's one of those Peter Jackson movies that everybody kind of forgot about.
Yep. Also, gotta say it, Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith in Men in Black. Like one of the best cinematic odd couples of all time.
Yeah, that really does take the cake for me. I mean, I really do think Men in Black is one of the best blockbusters we've probably talked about on the show.
I think ever. I think it's one of the best blockbuster studio tentpole films of all time.
I don't know that. I think that kind of. What about Gone with the Wind? I think,
and then, and then, before we get it, go listen to our Men in Black episode, Men in Black versus
Mars Attacks. Yeah.
And then my last cinematic odd couple, I got to go with one that's very Drew, but I love it. Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward in Tremors.
Are they such an odd couple, though?
I think so. They butt heads quite a bit. I mean, you could...
Sure, but like in a friendly way, not like in a mismatched way.
Okay, you can make that argument, but... Then I'll fall back on Tommy Lee and Will Smith. So what about you? Favorite odd couples?
I definitely got to go Tommy Lee and Will Smith for sure. You know, particularly odd couple, you know, to kind of put a spin on this in a movie that I really liked that I haven't thought about in a while, but I absolutely love is a movie called The One I Love.
Ooh, yeah.
Where Mark Duplass and Elizabeth Moss play a husband and wife. And there's quite a bit of tension between them. And it is a really, really interesting sci-fi premise that I think deserves to be seen by more people.
Yeah, it's a great flick. Next one is from Fergal Colreevy, and he says, what are your favorite film scores and or composers? Oh, boy.
This we could devote an entire hour to, but of course, we love Jerry Goldsmith. We love John Williams. We love Tangerine Dream, of course.
Oh, good Lord, yes. Their Thief score is so good.
Yep.
I mean, I have a John Williams is the immediate go-to. But also, big one for me, Basil Polidorus.
Basil Polidorus, RoboCop, Conan the Barbarian, among many,
Starship Troopers.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That score is killer.
James Horner?
James Horner, sure. Not a go-to for me, but...
he has a couple scores, though, that are just absolute fucking all-timers.
I mean, I'm sure I've said this before, but he says, you know, specific film scores too. Benjamin Wallfish's A Cure for Wellness score, that is what I've been writing to for like the past 2 years.
It is a really excellent score. Johann Söderqvist's Let the Right One In score is really, really incredible. The score to Swiss Army Man by Andy Hull and Robert McDowell is one of the most interesting film scores of the past maybe 25 years.
It's fascinating.
It is awesome.
I mean, gotta say it, Danny Elfman during the glory days, specifically two big ones for me, the Batman Returns score and the Sleepy Hollow score.
Yeah, and you know, he was still no slouch when he was doing stuff like Spider-Man movies.
No, by no means. Also, John Carpenter. I listen to a lot of John Carpenter when I write too.
Yep, I still listen to a fair amount of Elmer Bernstein as well, if you want to go back to the kind of Ghostbusters era. I love that Elmer Bernstein era, but also, we got to talk about Bernard Herrmann.
Oh, good Lord. Bernard Herrmann is kind of like Psycho alone is like one of the greatest pieces of film music of all time. And he was still making great stuff. His Cape Fear score.
Is
so good.
Vertigo is my favorite from him.
That's a good one. Also, I'll say Clint Mansell. I listen to the High Rise score a lot.
Clint Mansell. Cliff Martinez. I listened to that Only God Forgives score many, many, many times.
I think another one for me, Brad Fiedel. I listen to the Terminator score a lot.
Sure, of course.
When I write. Ennio Morricone, specifically, I do listen to the Hateful Eight score a lot, but more often, I love the score for Orca.
It's very good. It is very
I've
good.
come around to it. And then the last one I would say, it's not a whole lot, but Philip Glass's Candyman score, I think, is maybe the best horror score of the 90s.
It's one of them, certainly. Wojciech Kilar's score for Bram Stoker's Dracula is definitely a good competitor when it comes to that. Elliot Goldenthal's Alien 3 is a stunning score.
Yeah.
Really a tremendous work of art.
Yeah. Again, we could just keep going on with this one, but I hope that gives
this list literally never ends. Yeah. So we're just going to cut it off arbitrarily. Next up, Mr. Milksteak. What are some questions you both wish would get asked, but find that they rarely ever come up?
Currently in my life, would you like it if I offered you a job?
Heyo.
That would be a great question. I don't know. See, here's the thing. I thought about this one for a long time when it got submitted. And really, I don't think about questions that I wish would get asked because I don't like set myself up for it's so great, like the randomness.
Well, you and I raise questions that we both wish would get asked, and we talk about it on the show anyway. And like, if there's no space to talk about it on the regular show, we do something on Patreon for it.
Sure. So I think I can't really say there are a lot of questions that don't get brought up because, like you're saying, if there is something, it usually comes up between you or I, and then we end up talking about it in some form. So, I can't think of anything as far as that goes.
There's like, what would you want to change about film criticism, which is something, we've been asked before. Like, I think there was, in the AMA number 2, we were asked like, what words or what ideas would you ban from film criticism? Mm-hmm. And if I had my way now, I would probably ban adjectives from film criticism.
Okay.
It's not really more about how you would describe a movie in terms of adjectives, because most adjectives in film criticism, at least in popular film criticism or journalistic film criticism, are just adjectives about goodness. Did you like it? Was it fantastic? Was it wonderful? Was it wondrous? Was it, was it dazzling? Fucking jerk off. Really,
yowza. We
need to be using more verbs, because the question is like, what does the movie do? How does it do it? And I think it's way more important to use more verbs and fewer adjectives to get to that goal.
All right. Next one another one from TK421. How do you like your shrimp?
Sauteed, just barely cooked through.
That's right. That's the correct answer, because I love some sauteed shrimp, and make me some shrimp scampi, baby.
Yep. I have a really great recipe for shrimp in a chipotle sauce from Milk Street Kitchen. That is probably my favorite shrimp recipe. Favorite arcade game from TK421.
This is an impossible question. I know I'm missing things, so I say like classic. If I'm thinking like classic arcade games, probably Galaga.
Yeah, it's Galaga or Pac-Man for me.
I love Galaga. More modern, and I think the arcade game that I've replayed the most would be Metal Slug 3. I adore the art of that game, and it's really fun. I like the world and how it's super funny, but it also has a narrative that's doled out just through images. There's no text or anything that needs to tell you anything. And then really just like side-scrolling beat 'em ups, specifically stuff like King of Dragons. The Alien vs. Predator one's really good.
Sure.
There's one called Ninja Baseball Batman. It's not a Batman game. It is like anthropomorphized baseball thing characters. It's wacky, and it's one of my favorites. So I just like that. I like kind of mindless, like the I think it's Capcom. The X-Men side-scrolling beat-em-up game is really fun.
I liked the Time Crisis games and the House of the Dead games. The light gun games. Basically, they were. Really
especially fun. I mean, I think it was Time Crisis 2 that had the one that had the actual like recoil on the gun.
Oh yeah, it had the like fake blowback that the slide would actually move backwards.
It felt awesome to play.
Yeah, there was also a gun game based on Alien 3 called Alien 3: The Gun that was pretty fun.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
that's good ones. Next one from our good friend and loyal listener Waldrumpus. In case you're still taking questions, I've noticed the term genre as you use it seems to be quite different from what I learned in school. How do you define genre?
Well, we use this word in a couple of different ways. For instance, movies can be separated into multiple genres like horror, science fiction, comedy, drama, so on and so forth. But then there's this idea in the Hollywood system of films either being genre films or non-genre films. Non-genre films would be like your standard drama picture, a comedy that doesn't involve any sort of elements like science fiction or horror. As soon as you cross that line into the premise of the film being, based on some sort of implausible fiction, some sort of fantastic fiction, then you're in the realm of genre cinema. Whether it's, the fact that your movie is about a man who can fly, or whether it is about somebody who uses a machine to travel back in time. Suddenly these are what we call genre elements. And this is just basically based on Hollywood parlance. Yeah, it's an odd thing. Like Waldrumpus, I believe, is from Germany. So yeah, it's an odd use of the word. I agree.
For sure. I think you nailed it on the head with that answer. It is just, I always, especially having been in that kind of professional circle of people that are talking about art and specifically movies and television and stuff, genre came to be like anything that is very strong and wears its kind of fantastical elements on its sleeve.
Sure.
Like anything that is out now, it's like there's no way to say that this, vampire I'm stealing something that Danielle posted, but like, vampires in Atlantis type story. It's like, well, you kind of can't get away from that. That's going to be genre.
Precisely. Somebody once described Garden State to me. I think it may have been on one of our frequently visited film sites back in our high school days. They described the movie Garden State to me as a non-genre Donnie Darko.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, it's odd, right?
Whatever.
But there are some sort of stylistic choices in that movie that I could, see why people would say that. Next from Waldrumpus. Do you move away from the mic when you burp?
I try to.
I call it keeping it funky.
I do. I mean, I burp or I have a particular, I have to take a big breath or something. I try to. I'm not good about it, but the attempt is there. I'll say that.
Yeah, and I've once received feedback on a previous podcast of mine that I should edit out all the belches when I was leaving them in. And it was a show basically where my friend Adam and I drank a lot of beer. So there was a lot of belching.
Yeah,
just it was part of our normal rhythm of conversation. And somebody was like, "This is disgusting. You're disgusting." And I was like, "But it's how we talk." So naturally, I do edit burps out of the show now.
Yes. Next round of questions we've got is from Craig Ross. He says, this was the one where he said, is there a book you would love to see adapted? If so, who stars and directs it? So we kind of answered that with Danny's question. But Craig Ross also asks, if you could choose any director from history to direct a superhero movie, who would it be? John Borman.
I don't know, man. Borman, fine. He seems like the kind of guy who would make Batman versus Superman nowadays.
Well, here, I mean, there's been interesting, like George Miller was going to do a Justice League movie.
Sure.
Wolfgang Peterson was once attached to a Batman versus Superman. I think I picked Borman specifically because he's clearly interested in the grandiose and fantastical. You can see that with stuff like Excalibur and Zardoz. And I would love to see his riff on superheroes because I don't think it would be popularly accepted at all. It makes me think of something like Jodorowsky's Dune. like Jodorowsky's approach to science fiction would probably not go over well.
I want Buster Keaton's Superman.
Okay.
And I'm not kidding. Chew on that for a little bit. It's pretty tasty.
That would be fun. I mean, it would be very physical. So I like that.
Exactly. There'd be some really interesting and fun effects in it. Voldrumpus, he's back. He says, or they say, love the extended currently consuming. On that note, here's a question for the Q&A. It might be a little too philosophical, but here goes. What does it mean for a work of art to be pretentious? And what movies would you guys call that? Well, this is another list goes on and on and on where we could talk about what movies are and aren't pretentious and why.
Well, I will say, Travis, recently, and I think you've been kind of railing against the term pretentious.
Sure. I mean, pretentious, as the basic definition of it is it's basically something that is a little too big for its britches intellectually, where it's putting on an air of being smarter than it actually is, or
right.
It doesn't seem to understand the intellectual concepts that it's bandying about. But really, that's true of most movies. I mean, most movies are just a surface appreciation of something. It's a tough label for me to apply to popular art these days.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be tough. I mean, because even movies that I would say are, to me, are pretentious, I can't label as pretentious in general. It's like, yeah, this is just something that seems phony or is putting on airs to me, but that may not actually be the case. That's just my read on it. I don't know. I'm sure there's some, I would be probably like those Atlas Shrugged movies somebody made.
Well, I mean, I think we're all going to say that Ayn Rand is pretentious, but the fact of the matter is that most of the time that's just a synonym for bad when people talk about movies. They just didn't like it.
Right. Yeah. So I can't really think of a list of, there's nothing that came to mind when I saw this question, and nothing that really jumped out at me.
What was the last movie you described as pretentious? We got into it a little bit about it.
Yeah, we talked about Under the Silver Lake.
Under the Silver Lake, that's right. Yeah,
I was I think this will, and you even brought it up because there's a specific scene in that movie where characters are watching the director of that film's movie in that movie. And you're like, oh, the Ouroboros is happening.
Yeah, right now, as I think about it, I don't know if I would describe it as pretentious, but definitely masturbatory. Okay. Let's see. Last few questions here. Stephen Nespella, fantastic loyal listener with a great wife. He says, Travis, my family is staying in Fort Myers for a week in August. As a foodie, do you recommend anywhere cool or special to eat, including kid-friendly? We've been to Sanibel before, but never Fort Myers. Boy, I am the wrong person to ask this question. I have literally only been in Fort Myers once, and it was to drop Drew off.
Yes, I'm born and raised in Fort Myers. I would say I'm not a foodie, so I can't think of any foodie places to go to. But there is a really dope pizza place called Nice Guys Pizza. It's actually in Cape Coral, but that's a 30-minute drive. Fort Myers and Cape Coral interchangeable. Nice Guys Pizza, they have a really great menu and a lot of different specialty pizzas, kind of like crazy pizzas or whatever. But it's also a really cool place. Unless they've changed things since I've been there. They used to have a whole bunch of classic pinball machines in there. It's a nice little kind of, it feels like it should be a dive bar, but they've kind of retrofitted it into this really cool, colorful, hip joint that's a pizza place. If you and your family likes pizza, and I know they've done I think they've done a drag brunch and stuff. So just check what's going on before you go with any kids. But it's a really hip, cool place, and the variety of different pizzas they have, there's got to be something there for you. And it's a fun little place. That's what I would recommend. Stephen
Nesbella also asks, as movie critics, do you guys wish you could, quote, turn it off to enjoy a movie without having to judge it? No, I think maybe I pined for that at one time, but I've reached a point now where I'm comfortable just watching a movie for funsies.
Yeah, I can't really say turning it off, because part of the joy now is let's say I'm going to watch a movie that I know I like. If I'm going to watch Tremors again, it's not like I'm going to watch it and this time suddenly hate it. I'm now watching it and I'm going to be picking up on hopefully, new things. It's not just I try not to watch things passively, because as soon as I'm being passive with something, I'm like, I don't really think this is worth my time.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, movie watching definitely becomes more of an active thing for you and I.
Yeah, so I don't know, like, do I wish I could turn it off, like, to enjoy a movie? I don't know. Like, I feel like that part of my brain is probably serviced more by, like, laundry folding TV.
Exactly. Something you don't have to put a whole lot of effort into thinking about. Like, it used to be that the primary concern when you're watching a movie is being able to understand what happens in the movie's story, what character is going where and why. And as long as you understood the basic outline, you're doing okay. But Drew and I nowadays we're less concerned with that stuff than, like, what's the rhythm of the scene? Who holds the power in the scene? Why? How is it being shown that this person holds the power in the scene? Does the scene have an internal rhythm? Why would they choose this shot? Like, it's those sort of things that we're constantly thinking about. I don't think it takes a great amount of effort for us to think about those things.
It's just hardwired at this point.
Right. It's either it's whether or not we're deciding to actually take notes about it. That determines whether or not, like, how active we are going to be with watching it.
Yeah, so I would say I don't wish I could turn it off, because I think if I turned it off, I probably wouldn't enjoy movies as much.
No, I'd want to get up and do something else.
Right. Yeah, good point. And then the very last question for this Q&A episode comes from Steven Nisbella, and he asks, what is the likelihood that Hollywood will remake the, quote, untouchable movies like Jaws, Godfather, or Back to the Future? Is it even possible? Well, they just remade The Lion King.
I think it's not only possible, it's probable.
Yeah, I mean,
I've had to make peace with that a long time ago.
Yeah, so did I.
Why wouldn't they?
I mean, they've remade ones that I think if you ask that question, 20 years ago, if you ask somebody in like 1994, you think they're going to remake Halloween? People would be like, no, of course they're not. Halloween, it's like the classic horror movie. You think they're going to remake Nightmare on Elm Street? No, man. And I think at this point, those kind of movies, because I specifically say horror movies, horror's always looked at as like a junkier genre to studios.
That pays.
Yeah, that's an easy weekend. But I think stuff like Jaws, Godfather, Back to the Future, maybe not in our lifetime, but yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. And what form that might take might be something we can't even conceive, like what kind of approach to a remake of The Godfather would be. Like, would it even be a movie, or would it be 3 seasons of a Netflix show?
Sure. I think the one that most fits, like, the sort of meme culture that we have nowadays that would determine whether or not something is remade is probably Back to the Future. It was already remade as a series of video games by Telltale.
Right. Yeah. It was a semi-remake continuation thing. And that's the thing too, is like, maybe these things are going to get remade in formats that aren't necessarily what we consider, theatrical releases.
Right. And it won't necessarily be a straight remake. It'll be something called Back to the Future, and it'll be a legacy sequel. Like, legacy sequels really are the new remakes.
Sure.
Because often a legacy sequel just follows the same template as the original film.
Force Awakens.
Sure. And countless others that are actually, been pretty good. Like,
Force Awakens. Force Awakens is a good movie, but when people were coming out, it's like, this is really sticking to the original Star Wars' template. It's like, yeah, because they know it works.
So they can remake Jaws, call it Jaws, and then actually say it's a sequel, but they won't use the word sequel, and they'll hesitate to use the word reboot, even though we all fucking know it's a sequel and a remake and a reboot.
Sure. So
there you have it.
I do. I think in some way, The Untouchables, and they'll probably remake The Untouchables too. It will happen. And, like you said, you just got to make peace with it. And
you can choose not to participate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can choose not to participate and look out for other stuff that's not that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to end this extra sized Q&A episode. We didn't get to, obviously this is way longer than our regular episodes, so I think we'll do comments and everything when we get back to the regular swing of things next week.
Also, if we missed your question, I am terribly sorry. Just let us know in the comments section of GenreVision.com for this episode, and we will make sure to answer your question. I do believe we got them all. This is by far the longest Q&A we've ever done. You all just showed up with so many questions, and you're so willing to engage, and we are forever thankful that you are here and so willing to just play along with us. This is so fun.
Yeah, and that's why it's like I know after a certain point in this episode we were like, well, this is just going to be an extra long episode because we're not going to not answer these people's questions because you guys took the time to submit them. You guys are what's making the show great, and like Travis said, we love you for it. And we hope you'll be back here next week with us when we do Police Story 2, which we did the first police story earlier this year. Go listen to that episode. We had a blast with that movie. And looking forward to the sequel. So we want to thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. I'm Drew Deach.
I'm Travis Newton.
And we'll see you next week.
Right here on GenreVision.